After a long and full life of scientific research and wildlife conservation, Dr. Jane Goodall sadly passed away recently on October 1st, 2025. She was most known for her outstanding work as a primatologist, author, and for being the founder of various sanctuaries and wildlife projects. Among some of her most noteworthy accomplishments, aside from campaigning for animal welfare and for promoting environmental and climate action, was her work challenging commonly held scientific views on primate behavior, such as the long-held belief that chimpanzees were incapable of complex emotions and social structures, or that primates are incapable of making and using tools, all of which have all since been documented in primates. The prevailing question many people had, and that she no doubt was occasionally asked, was this: do you believe in Bigfoot? To a degree at least, we know her answer. Although there doesn't seem to be many confirmed cases in which we have her direct reply, the short answer to the question of what her educated, expert opinion on Bigfoot was is simply no. She did not believe in Bigfoot. However, she stated she was very open to the idea and found it intriguing to think about. So what exactly did Jane Goodall have to say about Bigfoot? In 2012, she was asked by the Huffington Post, and she replied, "I'm fascinated and would actually love for them to exist." But in this interview, and in others, she notes the lack of physical evidence. However, we'll put a pin in it and come back to that later. So once she told GQ magazine that she wouldn't rule it out as a possibility and respected those who believed in it. She also made an interesting statement about visiting an extremely remote village in Ecuador and asking the hunters if they had ever seen a monkey without a tail. She said, 3 of the hunters came back and said, "Oh yes, we've seen monkeys without tails. They walk upright and they're about 6 feet tall." She recalled, noting they know nothing of Bigfoot. This is in itself remarkable. These hunters had little to no knowledge of the outside world, much less Bigfoot or what a cryptid is, and yet they described something that sounded an awful lot like Bigfoot. Not only that, but Jane goes on to say, every single country has its version: Yeti, Yowie in Australia, Wild Man in China. And this simple fact is one of the biggest arguments believers will bring up. It wasn't just those 3 hunters at Ecuador. Entire tribes throughout the globe and throughout the ages describe these same hairy wild men. The words used translate to nearly the exact same thing the world over, and they describe largely the same thing. Although the size and coloring of the creature varies from region to region, they all have this creature in common. From remote jungle villages to modern-day native reservations, many cultures worldwide not only speak of these Bigfoot-like creatures as real flesh and blood animals, but they have generations of stories about them. These words, descriptions, and stories go back centuries and have even been depicted in cave drawings and other traditional art. Could that really just be a coincidence? Although she didn't directly believe in Sasquatch or a subspecies of it, she certainly understood the implications of every country and culture having a version of the same animal, going back thousands of years in some cases. Now, to circle back to something she said a few times in regards to Bigfoot, and this is of course a major thing to any serious person, the lack of physical evidence. This is where many people would, quite frankly, be surprised. It isn't actually true that there is no physical evidence of a Sasquatch or other bipedal primates, but this fact is one that gets dismissed and buried under the countless heaps of ridiculous videos of someone in a cheap Halloween costume or so-called field researchers that will enforce anything and everything as proof of Bigfoot as long as it gets them attention. No. Any serious cryptozoologist or level-headed researcher will point you to the actual physical evidence and arguable proof of their existence. Firstly, yes, it's true that the majority of the hair samples found when tested have ended up being human or belonging to another animal. However, in a 2007 episode of History Channel's Monster Quest, a hair and blood sample was collected from a board with screws after the creature that had destroyed a remote cabin had allegedly stepped on it, injuring itself. After being collected, the sample was sent to several experts at New York University, including wildlife biologist Dr. Lynn Rogers. The results were astounding to say the least. The conclusion reached was that the hair sample belonged to no known North American mammal, including bear and human, and the hair had most likely never been cut. The blood was determined to be very close to both human and chimpanzee, but containing a deviation that set it apart as unique. Now, Does that perhaps change how you think about the so-called total and complete lack of physical evidence? Apparently, Dr. Goodall, like the majority of the global population, was unaware of the incredible finding. The episode of Monster Quest received little media attention, the New York Post being the only major publication to cover the story at all. And it's apparent that the journalist writing the article fails to realize or care about the magnitude of the results. There is more physical evidence than just this, though. Experts in many fields have analyzed evidence and have, in some rare cases, concluded that what they were provided was either impossible to fake or belonging to no known animal. We don't have time to get into each of these in this video, but some examples of these are certain vocals of Sasquatch being analyzed by wildlife professionals, which multiple experts determine the vocalizations to be natural and authentic, and its pitch and frequency not belonging to any native animal. You also have cases of professionals reviewing certain footage and stating it would be impossible to recreate a suit with that much realism, with the muscle tone and definition so clear. Or consider the many times experts have picked apart footage and concluded that it physically could not be human, a bear, or any known animal for that matter, based on their trained, educated analysis. It's true that a lot of these scientists are loath to say the word Bigfoot, even after seeing results and knowing their own conclusions. But can all these scientists, experts, and professionals in all these different fields and specialties all be wrong and have made incorrect conclusions? Of course, the vast majority of physical evidence is easily proven to belong to another animal, and if you search the internet for any Bigfoot videos or photos, you know that most of it is total hogwash. It's fakes, it's misidentifications, and sometimes the subject in the video is literally and obviously a stump, a costume, and not even alive. But what about these precious few that can't be disproven? The ones where even the experts are at a loss for words or an explanation. The point is, there have been samples that can't be proven as a known animal, and many cases where a professor of anatomy or a fingerprint expert comes to the same conclusions. Is that not physical evidence? As one last example of a professional concluding that Bigfoot is possible, if not absolutely real, let's take a look at Dr. Jeff Meldrum's findings. The late Dr. Meldrum was a professor of anatomy and anthropology and later in life a tremendous Sasquatch believer. His scientific and level-headed ideas about the physical attributes of the creature and his detailed analysis of Sasquatch footprints made him a leader in Bigfoot research for many years. It may be hard to believe, but he didn't always believe in Bigfoot. Like most people, he thought it was all a joke. It wasn't until he was asked to take a look at some fingerprints and footprints that he changed his mind on the matter. Why? Because he was astonished by what he found. As an expert in his field, he immediately realized the footprints he was looking at were genuine, from a real flesh and blood animal, and totally and completely impossible to fake. Throughout his career, he referenced many footprint casts and how they exhibited such amazing detail, such as scars, toe curls, and perhaps most impressively, dermal ridges. Dermal ridges are the individual prints that cannot be artificially replicated and that are entirely unique to each individual. Meldrum made the point that even if the mini prints he referenced could be faked, which he firmly insisted they could not, that it would be unreasonable to assume a person would plant them perfectly over the course of miles far out in the wilderness where they were extremely unlikely to ever be found, and especially not without the person leaving behind their own prints in the process. It also is noteworthy that Meldrum collected these print castings from all over the world, and that they were all similar enough to be the same general species, but still unique and individual. In his years of research, his findings included casts that clearly showed injuries, hair patterns, a variety of ages, as well as weight distribution and other detailed and specific factors that indicated anything from gender to health. Once again, is all this just a coincidence? Is Dr. Meldrum's findings not physical evidence? Now, in conclusion, Jane Goodall did not believe in Bigfoot, at least not strongly or directly, but she did make it known that she was open to the possibility and thought it was narrow-minded to dismiss it entirely. She certainly was the kind of scientist to be open-minded and acknowledge that there are things in the universe we do not yet understand, and she was throughout her life respectful to believers and not overly critical or cynical about the very idea of them existing, which is certainly more that can be said for many other closed-minded scientists who won't even begin to consider the evidence. That's it for today's video. Did you know about any of the physical evidence? Let us know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you next time at the Crow's Nest.